I always thought I had a good life. Not perfect. Nothing is ever perfect, but solid. Dependable. My name is Daniel, and I spent the last 8 years believing that I had built something worth holding on to. A marriage with Sophia, a woman I loved more than anything, and a life that felt, at least on the surface, like something unshakable. I won't sit here and say we never had arguments. Of course we did. Anyone who claims otherwise is either lying or delusional. But arguments aren't red flags. They're just part of being human, of being married. You disagree, you work through it, and you move on. That's what I thought. I was wrong. The real red flags? They don't show up in raised voices or slam doors. They creep in through silences, through forced smiles, through the little shifts in someone's behavior that you ignore because you don't want to seem paranoid. You tell yourself you're imagining it, that everything is fine. That's what I did. And Margaret, my mother-in-law, was never part of those red flags. If anything, I thought she was an ally. That's the part that still makes me pause. I actually liked Margaret. We weren't best friends or anything, but we had an understanding. Some men dread their mother-in-law's involvement in their marriage, but I never had a reason to. Margaret wasn't overbearing or intrusive. She kept her opinions to herself for the most part. I saw her as a kind, widowed woman who had done her best raising Sophia, and I respected that. So when I tell you I didn't see this coming, I mean it. Margaret wasn't the mother-in-law who whispered in her daughter's ear to poison her mind against me. She wasn't the one constantly making snide remarks about the way I handled our marriage or our finances. She wasn't the one criticizing me behind my back. Or at least, if she was, she did a damn good job hiding it. Which is why I never thought twice about inviting her on the trip. You probably think that sounds naive. And in hindsight it was. But at the time, it felt natural. It wasn't the first time I had done something generous for Sophia's family. That's what you do when you love someone. You extend that love to the people they care about. So when I planned a vacation to Spain, a gift for my wife, a chance for us to escape, to experience something new, I thought, why not include Margaret? She was alone. After all, her husband had passed, and it wasn't like she had a full schedule keeping her busy. It was meant to be an act of kindness. That's what still eats at me. I did it out of love, and it backfired in a way I never could have predicted. I had spent years thinking that Sophia and I had a strong marriage. We made decisions together. We had built a home together. We had supported each other through tough times. I knew her inside and out, or so I thought. What I didn't realize was that there was another version of our life that existed outside of what I knew. A version where Margaret despised me. A version where Sophia was willing to let her mother dictate how she felt about me. A version where everything I thought was solid was nothing more than an illusion waiting to crack. And the worst part? I didn't see it coming. Not even a little. That's what betrayal is, after all. It's not the enemy you expect. It's the knife you never saw coming. It started with a simple idea. A gift. A way to break out of the routine, to do something memorable for my wife, Sophia. We had both been working hard, our schedules leaving little time for anything beyond the usual cycle of work, eat, sleep, repeat. I thought, why not do something special? Something we'll remember for years? Spain. The Mediterranean sunshine, vibrant streets of Barcelona, historic landmarks, world-class food. It was the kind of trip that people talked about for years. A trip we both deserved. I started planning everything myself. Flights, hotels, restaurants, tours. I wanted it to be effortless for her. No stress, no logistics, just pure enjoyment. I went all out, sparing no expense. But then I made the mistake. At the time, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a thoughtful gesture. A way to be considerate, to be the kind of husband who looked beyond just his own happiness. That's when Margaret came into the picture. She had been feeling lonely since her husband passed. Sophia worried about her, always mentioning how she didn't get out much anymore. I figured, why not include her? Wouldn't it be nice for Sophia to have this experience with both of us, her husband and her mother? I didn't expect an overwhelming reaction when I brought it up. I expected Sophia to be pleasantly surprised, maybe even emotional. But instead, she just blinked at me, as if processing something strange. You want to bring my mom? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. I mean, it's not a problem. I'll cover most of the costs. She'll just need to handle her personal expenses. It might be nice for her, you know? Sophia hesitated. It was subtle, but I caught it. She glanced away, pressing her lips together like she was debating something in her head. I didn't think much of it. That's really generous of you, she finally said. I'll ask her and see if she's up for it. I expected Margaret to be grateful, excited, even. A free trip to Spain isn't something you get every day, especially not when someone else is footing the bill. But when Sophia told me that Margaret agreed to come along, something felt off. She said yes, Sophia mentioned over dinner one night, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. She thinks it'll be fun. No excitement. No warmth. I should have noticed it then. Should have asked questions. But I didn't. I was too busy picturing the perfect vacation, imagining the three of us enjoying a once-in-a-lifetime experience together. So, I continued planning. Booked a beautiful hotel overlooking the water. Reserved a rooftop dinner at one of the finest restaurants in Barcelona. Organized a private tour of historic sites. I was excited. Genuinely excited. And then the moment arrived. I held the plane tickets in my hands, standing in the living room, expecting smiles and gratitude. Expecting that moment where they both realized just how much effort I had put into this. Margaret sat on the couch, her expression unreadable. Sophia stood beside her, arms crossed loosely, watching me. Surprise, I said, grinning as I handed them the tickets. Silence. Sophia was the first to react. She took the tickets, looking them over, then smiled. But it wasn't the beaming, genuine kind of smile I expected. It was small, tight. Wow, Daniel, you really did all this? Margaret, on the other hand, said nothing at first. She just stared at me. Then, finally, she nodded. Not a single word of thanks. That was red flag number one. Red flag number two? The way she said, "You've really outdone yourself." No warmth. No appreciation. Just a statement. It was the kind of tone people used when they were forcing themselves to say something polite. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just shocked. Maybe she wasn't the type to show excitement the way other people did. We'll have a great time, I assured them, ignoring the weird feeling creeping up my spine. Margaret just nodded again. Not another word. The morning of the flight, I woke up feeling energized, excited. I had spent weeks preparing for this. Now, it was finally happening. I expected Sophia to be the same way. Instead, she seemed distracted. You okay? I asked as we packed our bags. She nodded quickly. Yeah, just thinking about everything we have to do when we get back. I should have seen red flag number 3 right then, but I chalked it up to stress. Not everyone handles travel the same way. Margaret, on the other hand, looked almost too calm. While I was buzzing with anticipation, she sat in the back seat on the way to the airport. Staring out the window like this was just another errand. At one point, I caught her watching me in the mirror. I smiled at her. She didn't smile back. That was red flag number 4. The flight to Spain was long, but comfortable. I had made sure we had good seats, extra legroom, meals pre-ordered. Everything to make it as enjoyable as possible. But throughout the flight, Margaret barely spoke to me. She chatted with Sophia, laughed at something on her phone, even made small talk with a flight attendant. But with me? Nothing. I tried a few times to engage her. You excited to see Barcelona? Yeah, I suppose. I found this great tapas place we can try our first night. People say it's the best in the city. And that was red flag number 5. By the time we landed, the excitement I had originally felt was dampened by something else. It was like an invisible weight in the air. Something I couldn't quite define but couldn't ignore either. But I was still hopeful. I told myself, maybe she just needs time to warm up. After all, who could be upset about a free vacation to Spain, right? Wrong. So wrong. Because I had no idea that I was walking into a situation where I was never meant to be a part of the trip at all. I had planned everything to make them feel special. But what I didn't know was that, in Margaret's mind, I had never belonged there in the first place. The first few days in Spain were everything I had hoped for, at least on the surface. I had done my homework. I planned every single detail of the trip meticulously, making sure Sophia and Margaret would have an unforgettable experience. The weather was perfect. Sunny, but not scorching. A light breeze followed us as we strolled through Barcelona's winding streets. The scent of fresh bread, roasted almonds, and grilled seafood lingered in the air. I could still hear the distant strumming of a street musician playing the Spanish guitar, the sound melting into the hum of tourists and locals alike. I wanted this to be the memory they carried home. A perfect escape. A vacation that bonded us closer together. And at first, it seemed like it was working. Margaret wasn't exactly warm, but she wasn't outwardly rude either. She went along with our plans, ate the food, visited the sights, even smiled a few times. Sophia seemed a little off, but I brushed it off as jet lag, travel stress, or maybe just her adjusting to having her mom on the trip. I told myself to stop overthinking. Just enjoy the trip. So I did. We started the mornings with churros and thick, rich Spanish hot chocolate. We wandered through the historic Gothic quarter, the cobblestone paths leading us to hidden gems, tiny bookshops, local artisans selling handmade jewelry, old churches that stood silent and proud, untouched by time. We took a boat ride along the coast, the deep blue of the Mediterranean stretching endlessly in every direction. Margaret didn't say much, but she seemed content, and that was enough for me. The first night, I had booked a rooftop dinner at one of the best restaurants in the city. A table with a perfect view, a menu full of authentic Spanish dishes, soft candlelight flickering against the glass of our wine glasses. I looked at Sophia, taking her hand in mine, smiling. Happy? She smiled back, small, but genuine. Yeah. Margaret cleared her throat. I turned to look at her. The expression on her face? That was red flag number 6. Because for the first time, I saw it. Not just indifference, but something deeper, something colder. But she caught herself. She forced a smile, took a sip of her wine, acted as if nothing had happened. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe she just wasn't a fan of fancy dinners. Maybe she was tired. Maybe I was ignoring what was right in front of me. It wasn't just Margaret's reaction at dinner. It was a pattern. I started noticing little things. The way she would always walk slightly ahead of me, as if she didn't want to be seen next to me. The way she would engage with Sophia, but never with me. The way she never thanked me for anything. Not once. I told myself I was overthinking. Some people just aren't expressive. Some people just don't show gratitude the way others do. But then there were the whispers. Margaret and Sophia would exchange glances, murmur under their breath, then stop the second I looked over. I wasn't paranoid. I knew the difference between normal mother-daughter conversations and something else. Something secret. I should have asked right then and there. Should have called it out. But I didn't. Because who wants to cause drama on a vacation? So I let it go. And that was my mistake. One afternoon, we visited Park Güell, one of Barcelona's most iconic landmarks. The entire place looked like something out of a dream. Vivid mosaics, winding pathways, breathtaking views of the city below. It was the kind of place that made you stop and just appreciate being alive. We were standing at one of the scenic viewpoints when I noticed Margaret staring at Sophia. Not just looking, staring. And then, in the softest voice, she said something I wasn't meant to hear. You don't have to force yourself, you know? Sophia's lips tightened. She didn't respond. I didn't say anything either. But that was red flag number 7. Because I knew, she wasn't talking about the vacation. She was talking about me. The night before everything changed, I made one last attempt. We went to a flamenco show, the kind you could only find in Spain. The energy was electric. Dancers moved with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. The music, the rhythm, the passion. It was unforgettable. And I wanted them to feel it too. I turned to Sophia, reaching for her hand. She let me hold it, but it felt different. I turned to Margaret. She wasn't watching the show. She was watching me, expressionless. I smiled at her. She looked away. And I knew. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew. Something was coming. Something I couldn't stop. I just didn't know how bad it would be. Yet. Waking up in a hotel room in Spain should have felt luxurious, peaceful even. The golden morning light streamed through the large window, casting a warm glow over the modern furnishings. The air smelled faintly of salt from the Mediterranean, mixed with the remnants of last night's expensive cologne. But something felt wrong. It wasn't the usual sluggishness of travel fatigue. It wasn't the hangover from the wine at dinner. It was something else. An emptiness. I reached across the bed, expecting to feel Sophia's warmth, the soft weight of her presence beside me. But instead, my hand landed on cold sheets. I frowned, blinking awake. The room was too quiet. I sat up, scanning the space. The curtains were still drawn. The bathroom door was wide open, the closet half empty. And then I saw it. No suitcases. No bags. Sophia's things gone. Panic shot through me so fast it made my stomach churn. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my fingers moving on instinct. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. And again. Nothing. A lump formed in my throat as my brain scrambled for a logical explanation. Maybe she had stepped out for coffee? Maybe she and Margaret had gone sightseeing early? But then I saw it. Margaret's bags were gone too. No. 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 This wasn't oversleeping and missing plans. This wasn't forgetting to leave a note. They had left me. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart hammering. This had to be a mistake. I dialed again. This time, Margaret. She picked up after the second ring. Daniel. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Where are you? Where's Sophia? I demanded, my voice sharp. A pause. Then, with chilling indifference, she said, we left. We're already at the airport. For a second, I thought I misheard her. What? We're flying back home. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I felt my stomach drop. I swallowed, my throat dry. You left? Without telling me? Without even leaving a note? She exhaled like this conversation was beneath her. I didn't think it was necessary. I stood up, my head spinning. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. Put Sophia on the phone. Another pause. Then, a shuffling sound. When Sophia's voice finally came through, it was different. Colder. Daniel. I sucked in a breath. What the hell is going on? You left? Why? Silence. Then, the words that would haunt me forever. Because I don't want to be here with you anymore. It was like getting punched in the gut. I clenched my jaw. What? What are you talking about? Margaret's voice cut in, smooth and sharp as glass. Daniel, let's not drag this out. This trip was a mistake. Sophia needs space. Space? I let out a humorless laugh, running a hand through my hair. I paid for this trip. I planned everything. And now, I was being abandoned like an afterthought. I don't understand. We were fine yesterday. What changed? My voice was tight, controlled. Margaret let out a little sigh, the kind people give when they're talking to someone they find exhausting. Nothing changed, Daniel. You're just slow to catch up. My pulse roared in my ears. Excuse me? Sophia's voice was quieter. Daniel, Mom and I talked, and I realized I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want this trip. I don't want. She hesitated. I knew what she was about to say, but she didn't finish the sentence. And that silence told me everything. I sucked in a deep breath, trying to hold myself together. Sophia, just be honest with me. What's really going on? Margaret answered instead. She's realized she doesn't need to force herself to be with someone she doesn't truly want. There it was. The unspoken truth spilled into the open. I felt a strange kind of numbness settle over me. So what? This entire trip was a test? A setup? You two were just waiting for the right moment to walk away? Sophia's silence was enough of an answer. I had been living in a lie. Everything I thought was real wasn't. The love, the trust, the so-called perfect life? Gone. I clenched my jaw, my heart pounding in my chest. They had stranded me in another country without a second thought. Like I was disposable. Like I was nothing. Margaret spoke again, her tone final. There's no point dragging this out, Daniel. We've made our decision. A beat of silence. And then, the call ended. Alone, but not defeated. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen of my phone, processing, trying to breathe. The betrayal burned through me like a wildfire, scorching every last bit of trust one had left. But here's the thing. I don't stay down. Margaret and Sophia thought they could walk away without consequences, that they could leave me behind, erase me from their lives like I was nothing. They were wrong. Because the moment I picked up my phone again, my hands no longer shook. I knew exactly who to call, and I knew exactly what was going to happen next. Sitting alone in that hotel room, staring at the phone, I felt the full weight of betrayal settle in my chest. It wasn't just about them leaving. It was about how easily they did it. No hesitation. No second thoughts. They had planned this. Margaret and my own wife, the woman I had built a life with, had plotted behind my back, whispering in secret, waiting for the right moment to pull the rug out from under me. I clenched my jaw. I had two options. I could sit here, feeling sorry for myself, drowning in the humiliation of being discarded like an old jacket. Or I could make a single phone call and turn this entire thing around. I grabbed my phone and dialed the only person I trusted to handle this the way I needed it handled. Ryan. He picked up on the second ring. Dan? What's up, man? Thought you were in Spain? I let out a breath. I am. A pause. Then, in a more serious tone, what happened? Because Ryan knew me. Knew that something had to be seriously wrong for me to call him like this. I told him everything. Every damn detail. How I had planned this trip. How I had invited Margaret as a gesture of kindness. How they had waited until the perfect moment to vanish, leaving me stranded. By the time I finished, Ryan was silent. And when he finally spoke, his voice was laced with something sharp. They just left? Yep. Took a flight back. Didn't even have the decency to tell me in person. I had to call them to find out. Another pause. Then, Dan, you know we can't let that slide, right? A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Oh, trust me. That's why I called. Ryan wasn't just my best friend. He owned a private security and logistics company. The kind of company that specialized in problem solving. Legal, smart, effective, and exactly what I needed. What do you want me to do? Ryan asked. I leaned back against the headboard, my mind already working. They expect to go home and go back to life as usual. I want them to walk into something they'll never forget. Ryan chuckled. Say no more. I got you. And that was it. I hung up the phone, exhaling slowly, because when they landed, they weren't going home to comfort. They were walking straight into consequences. I spent the rest of the day enjoying my vacation. I wasn't going to let them steal that from me. I walked the streets of Barcelona, had an amazing dinner by the water, and even treated myself to an expensive bottle of Spanish wine. Because I wasn't defeated. By the time my phone rang again, I was sitting on the rooftop of my hotel, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Ryan. I picked up. It's done. A slow, satisfied smile tugged at the corner of my lips. Talk to me. Ryan laughed. Man, I wish I could see their faces. I closed my eyes, already picturing it. They should be landing soon. Yeah, and when they do, well, let's just say they'll regret every decision they made today. I nodded. Good. Very good. And then, we waited. 3 hours later, my phone lit up. Sophia. I let it ring twice before answering, my voice calm. Hello? What followed was chaos. Daniel, what did you do? Her voice was shaking. Panic laced every syllable. I smirked. They had walked into the trap. I don't know what you're talking about. The house, Daniel. Everything is gone. I hummed, pretending to think. Gone? That's strange. Don't play games. You did this. I leaned back, sipping my wine. You mean the house I paid for? The furniture I bought? The luxury you enjoyed for years without question? That house. Silence. Then, Daniel, please. This is crazy. Just tell me where our stuff is. Our? I repeated, laughing under my breath. You lost the right to say "our" the moment you boarded that plane without me. Margaret's voice cut in from the background. You monster. Where do you expect us to sleep? I rolled my eyes. Oh, I don't know, Margaret. Maybe you should have thought of that before betraying the man who literally paid for your vacation. Sophia's voice softened. Daniel, you can't just do this to us. I tilted my head. Oh, but you can leave me stranded in another country without a second thought? I see how it is. Silence. I could feel the weight of their regret. They thought they could just go back home like nothing happened. They were wrong. Daniel, please. We need to talk. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. For a split second, I almost felt something. But then I remembered. She didn't hesitate to leave me behind. So why should I hesitate now? I took a slow breath. No, Sophia. We're past talking. Enjoy the mess you made. And then, I hung up. I set my phone down, staring out at the Barcelona skyline. I felt no guilt, no regret, because some betrayals deserve a response. And this was just the beginning. Sophia and Margaret must have imagined a peaceful return, stepping off the plane and heading home to comfort, familiarity, and the security of routine. Instead, they walked into hell. I could picture it vividly. Margaret, still clutching her overpriced designer handbag from duty-free shopping, leading the way up the porch. Sophia trailing behind, exhausted from the long flight. Maybe they exchanged a glance of relief, finally back home, ready to settle into their normal lives as if nothing had happened. Margaret would reach into her purse for the house keys, only to realize something was different. The door didn't feel right. Maybe she thought it was stuck. Maybe she tried again, jiggling the knob, confusion creeping into her expression. Then the realization would dawn. The locks had been changed. And the house? It was no longer theirs. I was in Barcelona, sipping sangria on a rooftop patio, when my phone rang. Ryan had warned me, they'll panic. And when they do, they'll call you first. He was right. I let the phone ring twice before answering. Hello? What followed was hysteria. Daniel, what the hell happened? Why won't the key work? Margaret's voice was frantic, on the verge of breaking. I swirled my drink, watching the ice clink against the glass. Calm, unbothered. That's strange, Margaret. Have you considered that maybe you don't live there anymore? Silence. A stunned pause. Then, what? I smiled. Oh, this was going to be good. I could hear Sophia fumbling with the doorknob in the background. Then, her voice, shaking. Daniel, this isn't funny. Where's our stuff? I tilted my head, pretending to think. Our stuff? Oh, you mean the things in the house I paid for? The home you abandoned me for no reason? That's an interesting question, Sophia. I took a long, slow sip of my sangria before answering. Let's just say it's been relocated. Margaret's screech was loud enough to pierce through the phone. You can't do this to US. Oh, I can. And I did. Sophia's voice cracked. Where are we supposed to stay, Daniel? We don't have anywhere to go. I pretended to be sympathetic. Wow, that sounds awful. Being stranded with nowhere to stay? Can't imagine what that must feel like. Silence. They felt it. They knew exactly what I was doing. And it was delicious. Margaret switched tactics. Anger wasn't working, so she tried guilt. You're being cruel, Daniel. How could you do this to your own wife? I almost laughed. My wife? You mean the one who got on a plane and left me in another country? The one who didn't even have the decency to tell me in person that she didn't want to be with me anymore? That wife. Sophia stayed silent, because she knew. Margaret, however, still had fight left in her. This is beyond childish. This is illegal. You can't just take everything from us. I smiled. Oh, Margaret, you should really read the fine print on house deeds. A sharp intake of breath. She knew what I meant. She knew what Ryan had taken care of for me. That house? It was never in Sophia's name. The next few hours must have been pure hell for them. Hotels weren't an option. Sophia had no access to our accounts anymore, and Margaret's savings weren't enough to keep them in a luxury suite for long. I imagined them sitting in a parking lot, frantically making calls, trying to figure out what to do next. Margaret would be raging. Sophia would be crying. And I was still in Spain, enjoying my extra week of vacation. My phone rang again. This time, it was Sophia. Her voice was softer now. Less anger, more desperation. Daniel, please, just talk to me. I sighed, acting bored. Talk about what, Sophia? You made your choice. I'm just helping you live with it. A small sniffle. She was crying now. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I didn't know, Mom. I cut her off. No, you don't get to play the I didn't know card. You were right there, Sophia. You let this happen. And now, you have to deal with it. More silence. And then, the softest whisper. Can I come home? That should have been satisfying. I should have felt victory. But instead, I felt nothing. Because home? It wasn't hers anymore. I took a deep breath. And then, in the calmest voice possible, I said, "No, Sophia, you can't. You burned that bridge." A sharp inhale. Then, the sound of pure heartbreak. I hung up, sat back, closed my eyes, and let the satisfaction wash over me. Because they thought they could leave me behind. They thought they could walk away and go back to life as usual. But what they didn't realize was simple. When you betray someone, you better be ready for what's waiting for you on the other side. Sophia and Margaret thought they had one. They had walked away, convinced that they could leave me stranded in Spain and return home like nothing had happened. No guilt, no consequences, just business as usual. But when they arrived at that front door, bags in hand, expecting familiarity and comfort, they stepped into chaos. Because I don't lose. And I sure as hell don't let betrayal go unanswered. Margaret fumbled for her keys, pressing her lips together in frustration when the lock didn't turn. She jiggled the knob, tried again. Nothing. Confused, she looked at Sophia. "Did you give Daniel the wrong key?" Sophia shook her head, trying her own key. Same result. Margaret sighed. "Damn locksmiths must have messed up. I'll call someone." But Sophia's gut must have told her something was wrong. Deeply wrong. That's when they noticed the porch light was off. The windows were empty. No familiar warmth. No welcome. Margaret grabbed her phone and dialed me in frustration. The moment I saw her name flash across my screen, I smiled. Showtime. I let it ring. Twice. Then I picked up. "Hello?" My voice was smooth. Relaxed. Unbothered. Margaret wasted no time. "Daniel, what did you do? The keys won't work." I exhaled slowly, swirling my drink in my hand. "Oh, that's strange. Maybe because that's not your house anymore." Silence. And then, pure panic. "What are you talking about?" "Our house." I chuckled. "I hate to break it to you, Margaret, but that house was never really yours. Check the deed." Margaret gasped. She finally got it. She had assumed, like a fool, that she could walk back into my home like nothing happened. But what she didn't know was that, thanks to Ryan and some well-placed legal maneuvering, everything was already taken care of. The house? Legally mine. Their belongings? Gone. And now? They had nowhere to go. I heard shuffling on the other end of the line. The sound of panicked breathing. The realization that they had lost everything. Then Sophia's voice. Soft. Desperate. "Daniel, please. Just tell me where our things are." I leaned back in my chair, smirking. "Our things? You mean the furniture I paid for? The luxury items you enjoyed while you plotted against me?" A small sniffle. "Daniel, I didn't know Mom was going to do this." I laughed. "Oh, come on, Sophia. You were right there. You let it happen. You left me in Spain without even having the guts to tell me in person. You made your bed. Now lie in it." Silence. Margaret finally snapped. "You monster. Where do you expect us to stay? We have nowhere to go." I sighed dramatically. "Not my problem, Margaret." Sophia's breath hitched. I could feel the regret dripping from her voice. "Daniel, can we just talk? Face to face? Maybe we can fix this." I smiled bitterly. "Oh, now you want to talk? Funny, because I seem to remember calling you over and over in Spain, begging for an explanation. But you didn't care then, did you? You were perfectly fine leaving me behind." Her voice cracked. "I wasn't thinking." I cut her off. "No, you were thinking. You just didn't think I'd fight back." A deep silence settled over the call. Then Sophia tried one last time. "Daniel, please, can I just come home?" I felt it then. That small pang of victory. She wanted back in. She thought that if she pleaded just enough, if she played the sad wife role, I'd let her back in. But she had underestimated me. Because the truth was, Sophia no longer had a home to come back to. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Then, in the calmest voice I had ever used, I said, "No, Sophia, you can't." Silence. A breath. A choked sob. And then, Margaret's rage. You'll regret this, Daniel. You'll pay for this. I grinned. I already have, Margaret. I paid for a vacation that ended with me abandoned in another country. I paid for a marriage that was never real. And now, you're the ones paying. And then, I hung up. As I placed my phone down, I exhaled deeply. The thing about betrayal is that it's easy when you think you'll get away with it. Margaret and Sophia never expected consequences. They thought they could leave me stranded, walk back into their comfortable lives, and pretend I never existed. They thought I would break. But instead, I got even. And now, they were the ones stranded. No home, no money, no plan. I lifted my glass in the golden Barcelona sunset, letting the warmth of the moment wash over me. Because the best revenge? It wasn't anger. It wasn't shouting. It was letting them fall into the very hole they had tried to bury me in. And they would never forget it. I never believed in revenge before this. I was the kind of man who believed in fairness, in loyalty, in the idea that love and trust should always outweigh anger and resentment. But standing in my hotel room in Spain, knowing that my wife and mother-in-law had left me behind like discarded luggage, something inside me shifted. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. This was about teaching them a lesson. And now, that lesson had been delivered. After that final call, I imagined Sophia and Margaret standing outside the locked house, their bags at their feet, their world shattered. Margaret would be raging, swearing, trying to figure out what to do next. Sophia? She'd be crying, regretting, because she finally understood that she hadn't just left her husband behind. She had destroyed her own life in the process. I could picture it perfectly. Margaret furiously calling relatives, trying to find someone to stay with, while Sophia stood there, staring at the house that was no longer hers. The home she threw away for a moment of blind stupidity. And me? I was still in Spain, still enjoying the vacation I had paid for. That's the thing about people who betray you. They expect you to suffer. They expect you to break. But when you don't, when you rise instead of crumble, that's when they start to drown in their own choices. For the next 2 days, my phone buzzed nonstop. Sophia, Margaret, blocked numbers. I ignored them all, because what was left to say? They had made it crystal clear that I wasn't important to them, that I was disposable. So why should I care now that they were the ones drowning? Margaret had always looked down on me, hadn't she? She never thought I was good enough for Sophia, never thought I was strong enough to stand up to her. Well, look at how things turned out. Now, she was the one with nothing. And I had everything. On the third day, I finally answered. Not because I had any interest in fixing things, but because I wanted to hear the regret in her voice. And oh, it was there. Daniel, please. Can we talk? Just once. I let the silence stretch between us before answering. Why? You didn't need to talk when you left me in Spain. A soft, choked breath. I know I messed up. I wasn't thinking. I cut her off. I was done hearing excuses. No, Sophia, you were thinking. You just didn't think this would happen. Silence. She sniffled. I don't have anywhere to go. Mom, she's losing it. We don't have anything left. I sighed, pretending to consider. Then, in the coldest voice I had ever used, I said, "That's not my problem." A small sob. "Daniel, please. I love you." I laughed. A real, genuine laugh. "You love me? That's funny, because a woman who loves her husband doesn't get on a plane and leave him in a foreign country. I made a mistake." "No, Sophia. You made a choice. And now, you have to live with it." And with that, I hung up. And for the first time in weeks, I felt truly free. People think betrayal is a single act, a moment, a decision. But it's not. Betrayal is a ripple effect. It starts small, a lie, a secret, a whispered conversation. But by the time the wave crashes, it drowns everything in its path. Sophia and Margaret had assumed they would never face consequences. They thought they could walk away unscathed, return home to comfort, move on like nothing happened. But now they understood. Actions have consequences. And sometimes, those consequences are permanent. I finished my vacation without a single regret. Every meal? Delicious. Every sunset? Breathtaking. Every moment? Mine. And when I finally flew back home, stepping onto familiar ground, I knew one thing for certain. They would never forget what I did, and neither would I. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't anger. It's making sure they never get the chance to hurt you again.